And when that is made, all questions will be answered. There will be no questions. One of the characteristics of a realized soul is there are no questions. And so when people used to tell Anandamayi Ma that, what is the use of this sadhana and all? I don't see the point. I'm fine as I am. She would say, then why the question? Why do you ask? So the very fact that you ask means the journey is not complete. Once you reach there, all questions are answered. But the greatest thing that Indian culture has done is created forms that mirror the formless, created forms through which you can grasp, through which you can become more and more subtle so that you can reach that stage, and therefore even the form is worshipful. It's not a form created by an ordinary consciousness. That is why they were all munis. Bharata was a muni. Ayurveda was propounded by yogis, music, Sharangadeva, Sangeet Ratnakara, all yogis, because yoga is the way to become more and more subtle. And then India studied how to make forms subtle. And then again, how they can be made gross to reach to the lowest level. This kind of elasticity makes it an unending journey for everybody. The artist, the scientist, whoever it is. The journey till you reach that final goal is supported through forms, gross, subtle, more subtle, vanishing. Then into silence, into the formless. That has been the journey. So today we'll study the form of classical Indian dance. And I call these the Alaukika transcendental arts. Alaukika means on another level altogether. The ontological level is changed. Now you are not to compare it to anything that the mere naked eyes and ears can see. So it is important in an art form to understand. Aneri, this is the pyramidal one? Yeah, okay. It is important to understand what is the value system of an art, which comes from what is the purpose of this art, which is why I tell my students, ask yourself again and again, what is the purpose of this? And don't take my answers. You answer to you, what is the purpose? Then the value system becomes clear. So there are two visions of art, basically. There is the empirical or the laukika view of art. There is the transcendental or alaukika. Like I said yesterday, these come from worldviews. If the worldview that is lived in a community is transcendental, it makes way for the transcendental art. If the worldview is empirical, capitalist, liberal, or any of the others, the forms they will generate will be empirical. There is nothing you can do about it because that's what you see. The vision is what you see. So here you have the Laukika art forms. What are they concerned with? They're concerned with the socio-political, the economic, the individual, the personal, the egotistical, and even the pathological. If you look at cinema, a lot of cinema is about pathological states. So this is the journey towards becoming more and more and more and more and more personal. You begin with society politics, and then it tapers into the personal, even the pathological. What is the goal of these arts? It is to express and understand the empirical. Clearly, Indian dances and Indian music and Indian classical arts are not in this category, though they may be pointers caters to some of these things because transcendentalism is inclusive. It's not exclusive, but it says these are lower forms of reality. We are to graduate to higher forms of reality. When you come to the transcendental arts, their search is the spiritual dimension, the higher realms of consciousness, the cosmic dimension, the archetypal, the impersonal. And this is the most important thing. The search of the transcendental arts, like I said yesterday, is the impersonal, not the person. Can you transcend the persona, the personality? Then you really are getting a fragrance of what is life, what is existence. Otherwise, you are just in your small, blinkered existence. So the operative word for transcendental arts is non-personal. We say, aham brahmasmi, I am that. That is not a person. I am that supreme consciousness, which means, into brackets, I am not this person. Now, what the transcendental arts did, so the goal of these arts is to transmit higher energies to take the individual to a higher level of consciousness. However slow the process, the effort is that the goal of the transcendental arts, or rather the method of the transcendental arts is, can I make the elements impersonal? Remove all, that is the dirt, the personal. Can I make every aspect of the art impersonal? And so you find when the teacher teaches, there is an impersonalism. They are not concerned with whether you can put your hand up or that you figure it out. It is like this. There comes an absoluteness to it. It is like this. Get it. Go for it. Because I'm not interested in the personal. So how did the art forms achieve this kind of thing? This aspect of the vision is what has to be remembered always in interfacing with a classical form, that it comes from a transcendental vision, that I am not this person. Let me, through an ascension of consciousness, shed the persona totally, whether you call it the ego, whether you call it the mind, whether you call it thoughts. How can I reach a thought-free state that is not personal and that is just in the moment? So this vision of the art permeates its form, its content, and the experience it chooses to convey to you. It also permeates into the temperament of the artist. You have to be of this temperament. You have to be patient. You have to be silent. You have to be still. You have to listen and enter into it very, very silently. No noise is allowed here. So you need a student, either who has that temperament, or through the form that temperament is given over the years. And the student learns patience, stillness, introversion, silence. You learn. If you are long enough with the teacher. So therefore, these three aspects of the art are all touched by this vision of, I am not this person. How can I be non-personal? The other PowerPoint. So what is the structure of these transcendental arts? I hear a lot of artists from other disciplines that are contemporaries say, oh, we also practice. We also are into transcendentalism. Yes, but have you been able to bring that into the form? To talk is fine. To believe in it is fine. To understand it is also fine. But have you been able to, by a process of gradual grasping of forms, arrive at a form which will take the spectator and the artist to a level of consciousness that moves close to the spiritual, to the absolute. So, this was for another session that I was thinking, but here I will just touch upon maybe the first one, of course, and maybe the second one. So these are the things it influences. It influences aesthetic concepts. The concept of rasa is nothing but the concept of Brahman. So the Upanishads say, raso vaisaha. Rasa is that. There are a lot of discourses on rasa by the great masters. Again, all of them yogis. Abhinavagupta was the greatest tantric yogi, and he expounded the Natya Shastra. There must be a reason for it, why he would even come to a dance or a theater form. And in their analysis of rasa, the final analysis was raso vaisaha. Rasa is that. So when we say beauty, when a transcendental art says beauty, and when the word beauty is used in an ordinary sense, there are two different meanings. When you say happy, joy, and when transcendentalism says ananda, it's a totally different idea. So when you study Indian aesthetics, you have to go to transcendental philosophy and understand these aesthetics concept from there. When we say dance, it gives nothing of the sense of what dance means in a transcendental context where you say Shiva dances. It becomes the dance of existence. So therefore, every aesthetic concept in India comes from the spiritual. It also governs the rules of form and content, as we will demonstrate. The pedagogy, how do I teach this to a student? How do I reveal the form to a student is also from this philosophy. And finally, even the temperament that the artist needs comes from yoga. So yesterday, as we discussed, some basic principles, all forms emerge from one consciousness, Sadashiva, Shiva, Absolute, whatever you want to call it. The formless one, because of what in Kashmir Shaivism they call Maya Shakti, is able to appear as form. So they say it's like a mirror, but there is a difference. The mirror reflects what is already there, but the power of nature is such, the Maya Shakti, that it appears as multiple forms, and which are a process of reduction, adulteration, transformation, whatever you want to call it, from that earlier pure consciousness, because from pure consciousness, nothing can be created, like from pure gold. No ornaments can be made. This one, because it is so ordered, like we said yesterday, it's a state of intelligence, it's a state of richness, it's a state of creativity, it's a state of beauty. Cannot create haphazardly. So you find in nature that there are cosmic laws, there are mathematical proportions. Yeah, everything. Look at your own body. It is a certain number of spans of your own palm. If you measure, you will find it's precise. So nature is precise. Nature is mathematical. Nature is geometric. All these principles are imbibed by transcendental forms, as we shall see soon. And so here is you descended from consciousness into this world of nama and rupa. Nama is sound, rupa is form. All that has a name has a form, all that has a form has a name. Nothing, the formless is another dimension. You come to the world of names and forms, and then you ascend by a process of sukshmikarana. That name becomes subtle, subtle, subtle. That form becomes subtle, subtle, subtle. And then what is left is just silence, stillness, dance, music, truth. Like that you have to. They have created systems whereby the way is shown towards that. These same laws govern the transcendental arts, and Shastra defines and describes the laws of form. Shastra is nothing but search for truth in form. This is the thing. For everything, search for truth. Truth in food, truth in form, truth in nature, truth in the times of the day. There is a truth in everything which is objective, absolute, nothing to do with what you feel. 3 o'clock is Brahma Muhurta. If you cannot get up, that's another thing, but you can't change Brahma Muhurta. It is at that time. So this system of absolutes to which you surrender, again no ego, to which you surrender, you obey. If you cannot, that's fine, but the truth stands. The truth stands alone. It doesn't need you, you need it. This kind of uncompromising search is the spiritual search, is the search of these forms also. I may not be able to achieve the geometry that my dance expects. Nevertheless, it's the truth. And there comes the humility. Fine, I surrender to it. So, thus, in this sense, we say that all art is an imitation of the divine because of the truth. I want to imitate that. So, we find that another principle of transcendentalism is that reality is a multi-textured collage. You heard yesterday, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, 5 elements. It's a collage. There are hierarchies in it, but they are not destructive, not conflicting. They're organic, interdependent hierarchies. But reality is multi-layered. So Maya means partial reality. It's not unreal. My guru would say, if I hit you with a stone, you will get hurt. You can't say this is Maya. It's a partial reality. They'll take it to a larger thing and say, in that sense, this is nothing. So this coming to terms with levels of consciousness, levels of reality is very important in a transcendental art. And therefore, the very art form is multi-layered, multi-textured. And you have to graduate from level to level to level to beyond levels. So the art is constructed like that, as texturing. You wish to, you go deeper. You don't, it still makes sense, but it's superficial. You want to again go deeper, fine. What happens as you go deeper? You benefit. You benefit, and not just the form becomes more and more perfect. Going deeper means it touches me. It has always been a voluntary journey. No teacher, no guru can force it. But to go deeper means now it is going to come to me. I finish with going out, now I have to turn inward. And so this is the structure of an alaukika art form. What does it mean? So everything functions at 3 levels. Now 3 means actually infinite. 3 is the basic required to form a structure. Every aspect of the form works at 3 levels, and there are 3 aspects of the form like a Rubik's Cube. These 9 levels are what you are invited to enter into. So people find the course very long. How long is the course? I say I have a crash course of only 100 years. It's nothing, it's never enough, the time that is given. So how do we understand the classical form? The first layer, let's say the form, the first layer is aesthetic. It will be sensually very appealing, drawing you in. It will not disgust you or make you feel, I don't want to see. It will draw you in. It will as if lure you in. That's essential. The first layer is aesthetic. You go deeper, there is another meaning. It's symbolic. This stands for this. It is not this. So you go into another layer, it becomes symbolic, where the intellect, sophisticated intellect, has to understand the comparisons, the metaphors, the similes. Apply your intelligence to understand. That's the second layer. You grow. The third layer is the yogic, the final. The form is aesthetic, symbolic, yogic. Yogic means my personal experience of truth, what it does to me, what I feel within, whether the spectator can see it or not, is not the important thing. The art again enters into me. It's my personal experience of truth. Did this form make me silent? Did it harmonize me? Did it free me of thought and conflict and things like that? I have reached the yogic level. So the form is aesthetic, symbolic, yogic. The content, that is the stories that we tell through the dance form, the content is at one level narrative. It's telling you a story. They're very beautiful, interesting stories that even you can relate to as a normal human being. Like the story which Aneri enacted yesterday of Shiva and Parvati telling their children, take pradakshina of the three worlds, go round. And whoever comes first gets this golden mango. Every parent has tried this trick, right? When children are harassing them, they'll give them an impossible task and say, we'll meet after that. True to character, Kartikeya, the older son, he's a warrior, he's the leader of the warrior force of the gods. He gets onto his peacock and he's one of those very proactive people. He starts going around the three worlds on his peacock. But the younger brother is plump, very intelligent, but not very fond of doing impossible things. His buddhi, Ganapati is buddhi. He figures out these two parents, Shiva and Shakti, they are only the world, no? From them only, I will just do 3 pradakshinas, Ragya. He takes the golden apple, mango, and he sits. Kartikeya comes and says, what happened? He has already finished it. So here is a story that every parent understands. One child is brighter but lazier. One child is very active but doesn't pause to think. And then there is the symbolic level that Shiva and Shakti are the parents. Where do I do pradakshina? Everywhere. Everywhere is Shiva and Shakti only. Sanchareka padam, pradakshina vidhi, Shankaracharya says. Wherever I go, I am doing your pradakshina only. I am not doing anything else. So where is the need for me to go to a temple and do pradakshina? So you have the aesthetic, the narrative, but behind that is the symbolic. So tales that are very amusing. Shiva Parvati get married. Shiva is dressed like nobody in society is, with his tiger skin and ashes and his entourage of ganas. And Parvati says, does it matter? Can you not today just be well dressed? Yeah, he says, why not? And he becomes Kalyana Sundara Murti. Myths through which you can also understand how to be adaptable in your life, how to be tangible. And yet this is the marriage of the highest principles of existence. So there is the symbolic, finally there is the yogic. Often these stories are just symbolic stories of the Kundalini working inside you, inside your being. That Shakti has to go and meet Shiva, who is on the top of the head. Shakti is coiled in the Kundalini. and it has to move upwards. That is the marriage of Shiva and Parvati. These are the two parents around which in Kriya Yoga we say you have to circulate, circumambulate. So the yogic becomes the inward Kriya and my own experience of truth. And then I don't care what others feel because I have experienced it. So you find the content is narrative, symbolic, yogic. You come to the experience. It's sensual. It's beautiful. Absolutely. The costume, the makeup, the everything just draws you to the presentation. It's cathartic. Here it accommodates your personal. Yeah, as a parent, I feel like that. Yes, as a spouse, I feel like that. That catharsis. But eventually, it is yogic because Rasananda is a yogic. So in this way, if you see what is the characteristic of the transcendental art? This multi-textured form. Not just form, multi-textured form addressing different levels of understanding and coaxing you to go deeper, go deeper, go deeper. It becomes this entire Rubik's Cube with emphasis on the non-personal. I am not interested in pathological, personal likes, dislikes, preferences, prejudice, conditionings, etc., 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 mind, thoughts, past, present. No. Can we transcend and go to another level? So, if we look at how can you impersonalize these forms? I don't use the word impersonal because often people mistake it as harsh, violent, unnatural. No, let's be with non-personal. And how is this achieved? A, stylization. B, symbolism. And through this is what we call intelligent, when it is stylized, when it is symbolic, when it is taking you away from the petty into the vast realms of existence, when it is incorporating and pointing to cosmic laws, I grow in reaching out to them. So it is achieved through these devices and is not therefore merely entertaining. Like I said yesterday, we are in that period of human history where we equate art with entertainment. It's unfortunate, but that's how it has become. And across schools, when you ask them, name some artist, they will only say things like Amitabh Bachchan, Rajnikant, etc., etc., which means the exposure is only to the world of entertainment. But entertainment was a beast that did not have an independent identity when the transcendental worldview existed. Yes, the classical does have entertaining elements. One cannot deny that. Just as the entertaining has artistic elements, you cannot deny that. But the superstructure is art, not entertainment. So capitalism can only see art in one way, entertainment. And it has to translate into box office, it has to translate into viewership, TRP, etc., etc. The transcendental is totally different from this. And then, like I said, the final experience is also yogic, which is Rasananda, a complete dropping of personality. In the final stages of rasa, in the first stage of rasa, you drop your personality, because Abhinava Gupta and the other scholars, they said, don't do contemporary themes, don't do people who are still alive, try not to even do the creative works of contemporary authors, go to the epics, go to the Puranas, where you have never been face to face with these characters. That will help you to see life objectively. And then, so first your own persona is dropped, then another character comes, and even that drops to just have pure emotion. The rasa theory would require, another session to understand how, again, through the form, they make you do these things, where there are two kinds of rasa: khanda rasa, which is the ashtarasas, shringara, hasya, karuna, etc., and akhanda rasa, one rasa, absolute peace, ananda. So these are principles of transcendence, that the formless is a state of intelligence. That which you call God has to be intelligent, otherwise. The formless is a state of order. The formless is beauty, causeless joy. I say this because these are the principles we apply into our own forms. Let us see how we do that. So we did this PowerPoint yesterday to explain to you what is worldview from one, the many, time, space, designs, elements, gunas, motionless, erect spine, throbbing with energy. How still can you keep it? So this is the fire element. You cannot. So all the do's and don'ts come from this. Every dance teacher says, don't slouch, don't lean back, be still, pull the spine, vertebrae by vertebrae. This is the fire line. Fire, if it collapses, it's not fire. So the fire line, completely straight. The space in the square composition, the heart center, the way in which you measure. It is completely measured, what one can call the kshetra of the dancer. This is her grid. This square is her grid. Lines are dropping from in front and the back. There is a grid in front of the dancer. There is a grid to the side. There is a grid here. This much space I need to dance my cube in which I am, plus one cube here and one cube here. And one cube here and one cube here and 9 cubes. How much space do I need? Not in today's over dynamic choreographies. We are jumping from one end of the stage to the other and the other. But if your energies reach out that much, fine. Otherwise, it just becomes a physical move. So this much is needed. That's why the temple structure stages were small. Because how much energy are you going to give to it? This. So this is a grid. When I move, my grid moves. But I have to be in the grid. This is full grid, this is half, this is 1/4. Everything is decided when in every dance style you hold the hands here. This is 1/4. You can go to half, 3/4, then there's the limit. After this, your energy is not, then you move forward, another grid takes over. It is completely measured, grid to grid, no personalization. What is right measure? I tell students, you can correct yourself at home because it's all geometric mathematic. This hand has to be here. It can in some steps go here, and then it goes here. Similarly here, 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 here. That's all. And completely. And at the center of it is the spine, the line of fire, which holds everything together. But there is a deeper, this grid is not just inside, outside the body. This grid is inside your body. And that is the Sri Yantra that is in your body. It's a direct, actual experience of triangular energies interlocked as inverted triangles within your body, because this is nature's grid. So when she sits, yeah. When she sits, if you can see, this is one triangle, inverted. It is locked by another triangle upward. Locked where? Navel. It's locked at the navel. Why at the navel? Navel is the center of not just your body, your entire existence. You are connected to the cosmos also by what they call a silver cord through the navel. In yoga, we say that there are nadis, like a cord running in three on top, three at the bottom. This is what they call now the core. Why is this the core? These nadis are here. Then these three, 10, 10, 10, 10. Then those, each has 3, 3, 3, 3. Sorry, this is 4. 2 here, 2 here. 10, 10, 10, 10. Each one has 3,000 hair-like energy channels, like a tree. And this is expressed in these triangles up and down. So this is one more triangle. This is one more triangle. At each chakra, there is an upward triangle. There is a downward triangle. Your face is a yantra. That is why we, in goddess worship, we say meditate on her face, because this face is the subtlest of chakras. If you see how this, each part of the body is a yantra. The nose, the yantra. The lips, inward. It's nothing but, because this is the structure of energy. Inverted, upward, downward, triangles all over. That is why the dancer makes triangles. We are advised to make triangles. These extend to the front and the back of the dancer, from here to here, 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 and along the spine. This body is a Shri Yantra. When you dance, maintain the yantra. No matter what you do, maintain this yantra. Do not destroy it. And it's all hinged on the spine. Keep the spine erect. And these triangles are within a square. Be in the square. Be still. Be correct. It will take you inward. I say that this is the Padmasana of Indian dance. Just as they say that in yoga you do all asanas so that you can do Padmasana properly and be in it for hours together. This is the Padmasana of classical Indian dance. Just this sadhana is enough to sit, to be completely centered and aligned, shoulders thrown back. So this cannot happen, the shoulder. Yes. The very form, so as we said right at the beginning, the form So this is the water line we spoke of yesterday. See how the hands are the water line. The spine is the fire line. The stance is the earth line. It says go down. The choreographies are the diagonals and spaces all around. And intense experience of space is what, and time, is what a performing art coaxes you to go towards. A famous ballerina was asked, "Are you not afraid on stage?" She said, "No, I have space with me." This feeling of it being a throbbing entity all around you. And then Indian thought believes that the moment you enclose, anyway space is energized, but you can make it into a form when you enclose it. So the power of enclosed spaces. I'm enclosing it within and outside my body, the space. That's what a temple is. The human body is also a temple. How do you enclose that space around you in the form of, so the human body becomes a mandala. And what is the seat? All the 72,000 nadis emerge or are some way or the other connected to this navel area, to hold at the navel, the base, the Manipur chakra, to hold there. The Chinese, they call it the second brain. For the dancer, definitely, this is the brain that's working. You hold, sit. These are all yogic principles. Push the body. Be enclosed in a square, full of triangles, like a pyramid, up and down. And now in that kshetra, you be and move with it. Move, holding that onto yourself. Every aspect of the dance now builds on this. So the inner space, yoga expresses as chakras, nadis, centers, marmas, as the martial artists call. This is the vocabulary for the inner space. The outer space, the geometries, the konas, the chatusras, the trikonas that are formed. And when these are aligned, this is the human. So when the dancer sits in this square composition, this is her square. And this is the human body with series of triangles interlocked. This is our grid. Now the training begins. Or rather, you are trained to reach this point. Aneri will show this through how we train the body to always be in this, always be in this. This is the yantra. This is the power center. All other movement haphazard is of no use at all. Let us see how that is done. I'll just get my talam. Sorry, I think I've forgotten them. Are they there? Did I put them there? Are my symbols there? No? Today I forgot them. No, it's not in, it's okay. Anyway, we are taught not to depend on anything outside us. So my two hands are there. First, the first thing that a student in Mohiniyattam learns is what we call exercises. Actually, they are not exercises. They are seed forms of the style. They prepare you for the style and to express in a geometry that you choose. Once this geometry is there in your body, the outer geometry is chosen by the style depending upon their traditions, local, tribal, folk, whatever, what the parampara is. How that geometry has been chosen is usually from nature. Is usually like Mohiniyattam has swaying, swinging, undulating, because Kerala is like that, the backwaters, the swaying palm trees, the undulations. From that, and the previous forms also asserted that geometry. So that comes, this geometry, all forms, all styles, across, I would say even the world, if they have to be scientific, they have to adopt this. So the first movement that the Mohiniyattam dancer learns is, the geometry of Mohiniyattam is circle, half circle, semicircle, quarter circle, wave, dip. This is the language. This is the grammar. To execute that, the first movement taught is, again, nothing in dance without tala. Nothing. Rhythm is basic. Rhythm is a deep spiritual sadhana. It's yogic. Nothing locks you in the moment like rhythm. Nothing blanks out thoughts of past and future like rhythm. Nothing harmonizes like rhythm. So whatever you do in rhythm. I have a dancer friend who says, dance nahi aata hai chalega, rhythm aana chahiye. That important rhythm is be with the beat. Let's see how. 1, start. 1. See how she uses the navel as the fulcrum. 3, 4. When she reaches 4, this elbow will touch the center of this thigh. So the body has to be like that. Then she knows she is correct. Now, come forward, arched back. Now this elbow. Now lift up the body and come back to the center. This is 8 beats. Now to the left. What you do to the left, right, you do to the left. Again, this is a pranic concept. Pranas must be balanced. 5, 6, 7. Now this has to be done in speeds, second speed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 1, 2. There's a mathematical progression. If I do first speed twice, then I have to do second speed. If I do first speed twice, 4, 8. Freedom is mastery. Freedom is not manmani, as liberalism feels. I do what I want, it's my life. I want to express. Yeah, sure, you go ahead, go and express. It's not fit to be presented. It's not giving anything to others. Energy. Energy can only express through geometries. Pure energy can only express through geometry. So this is the first movement that the Mohiniyattam dancer learns, how to hold here and just, and in each moment, be still. And just there. And once again. And endlessly. You can't even take that decision on your own. Oh, once again. Why did you stop? The teacher will ask. So endurance, nowadays in Western performance art, they talk of endurance. It's how a great value of performing and is inbuilt in these art forms. 100 times, na din na. Chalo, teacher has gone. You do it. You have to do, I don't have to do it. But this endurance, they say it's learning by rote, but it never said don't pay attention. Learning by rote is when you don't pay attention. But the teacher or the Shastra never said don't pay attention. We presume that if I do again and again, I don't need to pay attention. And again, and again. a million times, like Guru was saying, no? The mind will go here and there, bring it back to the body. And it will go here and bring it back to you. If you enjoy this, you can undertake this discipline. The second movement now works on the knees because the grid, the outward grid is circular. Now I have to train all parts of the body to move in a circle. So, come, is she in the light? Or am I just pushing her out? Come. Yeah. So now only the knees in a circle. How do you rotate the knees? How do you make a circle? Like this. So when the circle goes down, she sits. And when it comes up, she gets up. Again, do the count of beats. 1, start. 1, 2, slowly. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, slowly. 1, become slow. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, second speed, 8, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 1. Just the knees. Now, combining the two, the body moves like a sleeping 8, like the infinity symbol. Again in 8 beats to both the sides, right and left, like this. 1, start. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, to the other side, 8, and 1, 2. See the straight spine, 3, 4, 5, it's held here, 6, 7, this is the fulcrum, 8, and from here you lift, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and next. The spine is rolled, vertebrae by vertebrae. You just drop, pick it up, feel every vertebrae. This is necessary to create the undulations. 1, start. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And the hands, the wrists, again you have to train. So there are some centers in Mohiniyattam. This is one center. This is one center. This is one center. Here. This is one center. And this. And they almost work in unison. So when this is moving, this also, and this, and this. This repeating the geometric motif gives a character to the style. Gives a consistent character to the style. So if you see Bollywood, 1 minute they are doing this, then they are going like that. Anything is allowed. You can do any geometry anytime. You can just shake your hand. So this kind of a thing, every classical style has chosen the geometry. Now that must be consistent. Again, non-personal. Your tendency might be, yeah, now I'm feeling happy doing this, now I want to do this. No, but you are not important. There is nothing that breaks down your ego like a classical form, as far as forms are concerned. Not that artists don't have egos, but at least in the form, it is made sure that you cannot do what you want. So the hands, and with that, even the eyes. Circle is the grammar of this style. So wrist exercises are done. 1, 2, 1. Start. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The stillness of the eyeball. 7, 8, 10, 1. The eyeball doesn't just not move. It is still. 6, 7, 8, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 1. Now the fingers. 4 types of movements are there. Beginning with the little finger, opening with the little finger. Beginning with the little finger, opening with the little finger. And then beginning with the forefinger, opening with the forefinger, beginning with. So even in Chinese medicine, this is important to exercise. The fingers play a very important role, and the 10 fingers are connected to the 10 petals at the Manipur chakra. And so moving this is activating your Manipur chakra. That is why I feel, this is my own personal, the Karanas of the Natya Shastra are constantly, this is being done, constantly. The Shastras say you can do this as many times as you want in a movement. There is no fixed, ki do this once, these are the energizers. You draw in energy, give it out. Draw in, give it out. It is a characteristic of Natya Shastra movements. I feel it's not coincidental that these are connected to the Manipur chakra and that they are used repeatedly in the Natya Shastra. Once this is done, so it takes about 6 months for a dancer to master this basic exercise. The stillness and all comes with time. Then starts the training of what we call adavus or alphabets of the style. I have divided these circular, so technically it is called Andolita movements. A circle has Andolana. It's also a Gamaka, and this is how Kavalam Sri Narayan Panikkar, who has done amazing work in Mohiniyattam music, described Mohiniyattam music having Andolita. I divided this Andolita into 6 expressions that are found in Mohiniyattam. Can you tell them the 6?
The 6 movements, type of movements are circular, swinging, swing, undulating, elephantine, and serpentine. And all the adavus, about 100 to 108, come in these categories. And sometimes the adavu can have more than one, but it is usually highlighted by a certain kind of movement in these 6 categories. So,
which is the first category? Gurnavat. So I have given them Sanskrit titles. Gurnavat means like a circle. Yeah, recite it.
Thit, tit, ta, tai, tanno, takka, cham. Thit, tit, ta, tai, tanno, takka, cham.
1, start. Dhit, tit, ta, tai, tannu, takka, jam. Dhit, tit, ta, tai, tannu, takka, jam. Second speed. Dhit, tit, ta, tai, tannu, takka, jam. Dhit, tit, ta, tai, tannu, takka, jam. Faster. Dhit, tit, ta, tai, tannu, takka, jam. 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 Ta.
Deen. The next one is swing.
The Sanskrit word? Prinkhanavat. Yeah? You said swaying, not swinging. Swaying, huh? Prinkhanavat.
Tat, tat, deen. Tat, tat, deen. Tat, tat, ta.
Digu takka deem. Tat tat deem. Tat tat deem. Tat tat tam. Digu takka deem. Tat tat deem. Tat tat deem. Tat tat tam. Digu takka deem. Tat tat takka deem. Deem. Tat takka deem. Tat tat takka tam. Digu takka deem. Tat 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 deem. Tat 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 deem. Tat 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 tam. Digu takka deem. Tat 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 deem. Tat 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 deem. Tat 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 tam. Digu takka tam. These are Chovadai movements. Chovadai means only the body and the legs. As you can see, no hands are there. These are devised by Bharati Shivaji, one of the most well-known Mohiniyattam dancers. But again, here you can see the operation of these centers while you are performing. Third one,
Swinging.
swinging, dolavat, to swing. Which are you doing?
Hit, ta. Thit, ta. Thit, tai, tai. Hit, ta. Thit, tit, tit, tai.
Tai. Hit, ta, dit, ta, dit, tai, tai. Hit, ta, dit, ti. Tai, tai. Hit, ta, dit, ta, dit, tai, tai. Hit, ta, dit, ti, ti, tai, tai. Hit, ta, dit, ta, dit, tai, tai. Hit, ta, di, ti, ti, second speed. Tai, hit, ta, dit, tai, tai, hit, ta, dit, tai, tai, hit, ta, dit, tai, hit, ta, dit, tai, ta.
Same as the Chovadai.
Which one?
Undulating.
Dhi, tat, one, start. Dhi, tat, tat. This is the tarangavat, like waves. Dhi, tat, tat, ta. Dhigu, taka, dhi. Tat, tat, tat. Dhi, tat, tat, tat. Dhi, tat, tat, tat. Ta. Dhigu, taka, dhim. Tat, 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 dhim. Tat, tat, tat. All expression. Your personality cannot enter here. It's geometry, arithmetic, space, time, joy. Over this is superimposed expression, the Ashtarasas, the 8 expressions. Every single expression now must have this whatever I show must have this grid, otherwise it is not acceptable. Aneri, I think we should. So I'll show you one piece because we are, yeah, this can go up. A small, not so small piece on Ganga. Now we are in the time of Mahakumbha, and this is an ode to the river Ganga. You will see what I spoke about the content being narrative, symbolic, narrative, cathartic, yogic. This piece has all the levels of expression in it. It describes the Ganga, what's happening on the banks of the Ganga, how Shiva received her on his forehead, on his head. It also describes how Parvati did not at all approve of this. Behind every successful man is an angry woman. She's not happy with what she sees. It can be taken at a literal, at a cathartic level as a man and two women, but it has much deeper meaning. She is the divine cosmic energy of Shiva that only he could receive. And then it seems in 7 tributaries, and these are supposed to be the 7 Guru Mandalas. Shiva alone can receive the entire cosmic energy. The rest, your skull will just break. He sends out trickles to the gurus, who send out trickles to us. And thus, cosmic energy reaches human beings. The piece also describes how Shiva is forced to lie to avoid a marital discord. Parvati says, that is a woman sitting there. He says, what woman? That's only water. She says, but I can see. I can see there is a face, there are dark tresses. He says, those are lotus in the water, and then bumblebees. It's not another woman. How? I just love you. She says, but I can see 2 eyes moving here and there. He says, they're just fish in the water. She says, but now I see breasts, and I also see lips. Now don't tell me this is also not a woman. And she gets angry and she says, look, she is staring at me, making how we imagine things. I think this is a simple example of that. Once suspicion gets in the mind, you imagine things. She says, see, she's making faces at me. See, she is insulting me. I am going to my parents' house. I take my children. But through all this, there is also a reference to the Ganga as a river that is unaffected by the drama of life. Children are bathing, lovers are courting each other, funerals are happening. Does that disturb the Ganga? The elements are our teachers because they are unaffected by any drama. And therefore we had a guru, Dattatreya, who had 23 teachers, and the elements were some of those teachers. So here there is a reference also to the Ganga as just carrying on. I present Ganga Tattvam, music by Kavalam Sri Panikkar.
ತಗಿನ ತಗದಿ ತಗಿನ ತಗದಿ ದಿಮಿಂ तकिण तकधिं धिमिं तक ताग जनं तकुकु जनं तग तकिण तकधिं धिमिं तक ताग जनं तग तकुकु जनं तक तक्कधि कधि कधिमि तग मन्दागिनी 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 महावेग महावेग मन्दागिनी मन्दागिनी महावेग तत्त्वं परमशिवगङ्गा तत्त्वं तत्त्वं शिवगङ्गा तत्त्वं तत्त्वं परमशिवगङ्गा तगिन तगदि तगिन तगदि त्रिमिं तगता तगिन तगदि तगिन तगदि त्रिमिं तगताग जनम तकुकु जनम तग तगिन तगिन तगदिं त्रिमिं तगताग जनम तकुकु जनम तग तगिन तगिन तगदिं त्रिमिं तगताग जनम तग तकुकु जनम तग तकदि कतकदि कदिमि तग भागीरथी 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 महाभागा महाभागा शिवदा शिववल्लभ गौरी भगिनी शिवदा शिववल्लभ गौरी भगिनी शिवदा शिववल्लभ गौरी भगिनी शिवदा शिववल्लभ गौरी भगिनी शिवदा 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 गौरी भगिनी गौरी भगिनी गौरी ವಲ್ಲಭ ಶಿವದ ಶಿವವಲ್ಲಭ ಗೌರಿ ಭಗಿನಿ ಶಿವದ ಶಿವವಲ್ಲಭ ಗೌರಿ ಭಗಿನಿ ಶಿವದ ಶಿವವಲ್ಲಭ ಗೌರಿ ಭಗಿನಿ ಶಿವದ ಶಿವವಲ್ಲಭ ಗೌರಿ ಭಗಿನಿ ತ್ರೈಲೋಕ್ಯ ಪರಿಪಾಲಿನಿ ತೇಜಸ್ವಿನಿ ತ್ರೈಲೋಕ್ಯ ಪರಿಪಾಲಿನಿ ತೇಜಸ್ವಿನಿ ತತ್ವಂ ತತ್ವಂ ಶಿವಗಂಗಾ ತತ್ವಂ ತತ್ವಂ ಪರಮಶಿವಗಂಗಾ ತತ್ವಂ ತತ್ವಂ ಶಿವಗಂಗಾ ತತ್ವಂ ತತ್ವಂ ಪರಮಶಿವಗಂಗಾ ತಗಿನ ತಗದಿ ತಗಿನ ತಗದಿ ತ್ರಿಮಿಂ ತಗತಾ ತಗಿನ ತಗದಿ ತಗಿನ ತಗದಿ ತ್ರಿಮಿಂ ತಗತಾಗ ಜನಂ ತಗುಗು ಜನಂ ತಗ ತಗಿನ ತಗಿನ ತಗದಿ ತ್ರಿಮಿಂ ತಗತಾಗ ಜನಂ ತಗುಗು ಜನಂ ತಗ ತಗಿನ ತಗಿನ ತಗದಿ ತ್ರಿಮಿಂ ತಗತಾಗ ಜನಂ ತಗ ತಗುಗು ಜನಂ ತಗ ತಗದಿ ಕದಿ ಕದಿಮಿ ತಗ ತತ್ವಂ ತತ್ವಂ ಗಂಗಾ ತತ್ವಂ 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 ತತ್ವಂ ಗಂಗಾ ತತ್ವಂ 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 ಶಿವಗಂಗಾ ತತ್ವಂ 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 ಪರಮಶಿವಗಂಗಾ ತತ್ವಂ 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 ಗಂಗಾ ತತ್ವಂ 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 ಶಿವಗಂಗಾ ತತ್ವಂ ಗಂಗಾ 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 ತತ್ವಂ
So friends, we are at to begin with, Mandakinidhi. Thank you for actually bringing it all together after these 2 days of just profound insights. And like Rekha and myself, those who are trying to impart young ones over here, the perspective that you brought in here today, between the form and the formless, and actually giving a glimpse of the profoundness of the subject. Deeply indebted at my personal level. Thank you for all the young ones who are here. And this is Arpana's first collaboration with Vidya Mandir. And Deven, let me just put it out there that we need to have her come back with the Khanda and Akhanda Rasa. So inshallah, that will happen soon, and we will have her back to share a lifetime dedicated, friends, to this subject. I know it is 12, but if any of you all have questions, Mandakinidhi has graciously agreed to spend the next 5 to 10 minutes for that. And if you're all speechless, that too is acceptable. We have another one. Yes, you can.
So I was very much impressed, and thank you for the performance. I have a question. Is in your dance a space for individual expression, or is it just movement which is predeterminated? Determinated. Yep.
Individual expression, personal expression of personal issues. You can do anything, but it's not a part of our aesthetics. We begin with the universal and end with the transcendental. The personal may, as it usually does, come in the universal only to that extent, not more. And is it predetermined? Not entirely, not necessarily. Once you have mastered the grammar, if you can come up with impromptu expressions, ideas in that structure, most welcome. We call that manodharma, where the mind takes over and you newer and newer creations you can, but it's all within that grammatical framework. You cannot have manodharma at the expense of grammar being totally violated. So it's possible. It does not have to be 100% rehearsed or as it is, but the framework, yes. The species remains the same.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great appreciation for what
Thank you
do.
all for being here. Thank you, Yogini and Deven for, sorry, yes.
No. Two quick questions. You made a clear distinction between the outward journey that of the Maya or the capitalist worldview, and the one that of transcendental, that of inward journey. Do they have to be either or is there a way
So
that
no,
they
the
can
inner
come
is
together?
the inner is an attitude, a vision, a perception. The outer, even the yogi goes through the same thing, livelihood and food and sleep, but the way they handle it, the inner awareness and the level of consciousness is all that matters. You want to engage with the outward, most welcome. There are so many yogis. My Guru Maharaj, which is Guru's Guru, he never spoke, he never got up from his place, he sat in his cave. When my Guru asked him, but the world needs you, he said, the sun is so far away, but it's doing work for the world. I am the same way, he said. I don't. So the inner, outer literally doesn't matter. The level of consciousness matters, and life has to be lived inside out, which means from the level of consciousness, engage. When you're ready to engage, if you feel it disturbs the inner level, you can even withdraw. The choice is there. But what matters is the level of consciousness. And there has never been a worry that in that case, I'm a non-contributing member of society, because each person's consciousness raised is an addition to the consciousness of the world raised. So all that matters is your state of consciousness and resistance to nothing. You know, I would tell my guru, imagine these people every day, 9 o'clock, they dress up and go to office. I could not do that. He said, no, never say that. What if you had to? So you still have to be in that state of consciousness and do what needs to be done. And if nothing needs to be done, but what matters is state of consciousness.
Thank you. That answers my second question also. Like, how does one discern that it's not mere entertainment or distraction? And I think
What is the art?
or any action actually in that, that it's not a mere escape or distraction or entertainment. And I think, again, your response speaks to that. But if you have anything to add to that, what was the discerning criteria there?
I still didn't understand whether I'm doing things to entertain myself.
Yeah, like outwardly, one may be engaged in things and one may deceive that I'm attempting to reach the transcendental, but it can end up being a distraction or entertainment.
So self-deceit is very common in the spiritual journey. And you have to become sensitive enough to realize that you're not fibbing to yourself. You can even lie to anybody. You can lie to the guru also. And he'll say, "Theek hai." But the harm is done to you. So self-deception. And what are the consequences? These are the ways you can find out. Is it making me more restless, more talkative, doing more? You have to gauge, though the guru is there, self-deceit is not encouraged. So you decide.
Thank you.
Because there are no general answers. The same thing somebody might be doing for entertainment, the same thing you might be doing might be necessary. Who is there to accept you? Ultimately, it's you. You know, like the Buddha said, be a light unto yourself. You will have to answer questions.
Thank you, Mandakini ji. I am a visual artist. I do life drawing, figurative drawing. And the concepts that you said, we learned it while we studied. The idea of grid, the idea of space, the idea of measurement. And though it's a very, we train in a Western pedagogy, so to speak, but our Shastras also speak at length about the arts, the visual arts, the sculptures are based on that. And if you can a little bit throw some light on the transcendence of this philosophy across various forms of art, not just, say, dances, also music, and also, sculpture, painting, a little bit if you can broaden it. And also this year's theme is humility, how you have been again and again saying that the importance of reaching for something beyond. If you can a little bit expand a bit. Thank you.
So the grid is a universal thing. And ours is a dynamic grid and yours. But I feel the grid is dharma, the grid is sakshi. Sakshi means witness. It doesn't move. It's the self actually. In form, the self is the grid. And from that comes a grammar. And each style has its own grammar. Each idiom has its own grammar. The only thing with the performing arts is that they are inseparable from me. Your painting you can see outside you. You can even measure and you can even throw it off and make it. But once you are performing, the grid is inside you, around you. You have to simply experience it. And that is a very intense experience. That is why I always feel that the dancer enjoys dancing more than the audience enjoys seeing. Because, I don't know if you agree, because I'm experiencing this grid and such immense things happening in and around me, completely created from the imagination and the intensity of it, that when you stop, it's gone. When you stop painting, it's still there for you to see, to give it to someone, whatever, to measure your... But when I stop dancing, it's gone. It's gone that very moment. And that is why Shiva dances, because this moment comes and is gone forever. And that is true of every moment in every performance. It comes, it's gone forever. This coming to terms with destruction every moment and the passing away of forms. Performing arts are a very intense. I'm not saying they are superior. There is no value judgment there. Plastic artists, architects, they take a great offense when we say it's dynamic. Everything is dynamic, even painting is. But here the actuality of it, the very form is passing away, destroyed. Susan Langer, one of the greatest Western aestheticians, he calls these destructible aesthetic symbols. And these are non-destructible aesthetic. And that itself explains a lot. In fact, I always used to begin a workshop saying, these are the differences, first accept. And then the transcendence and all builds on it. But the first realization of the dancer is forms come, forms go. But in that moment, they have to be perfect. So this is the karma theory also. Whatever you do, yoga karma sukaushalam, you have to do with great skill. However great your skill, it's going to go over. So it has nothing to do with if my skill is great, will it be? No, that's not there. So these are some fundamental philosophies of the art, which is why Shiva dances. He's not a painter. Because the dance explains the process of existence, the nature of existence, the laws of everything. And everything is there actually. So that's one of the workshops I do. Shiva Nataraja image decodified. What does this mean? This thing that adorns our drawing rooms and museums and schools, do we even know what it is trying to tell us? And in that one, or rather in all images, an entire worldview is depicted just through symbols, colors, postures. That's the greatness of this culture, to crystallize it into these forms that again are saying, look up, don't look at me, So I don't know if I answered your question, but performing arts are a different ball game, and it's an intense. I'm sure the painter is also experiencing space, but the fact that it's outside you. In fact, the performer is advised to stay outside her own performance. Abhinava Gupta and the aestheticians, they say, be a sakshi to your own performance. So again, the principle is the same. I feel that the plastic arts, painting, sculpture, architecture, music, they draw from each other. We aspire to this stillness, this perfection. You aspire to the life that is there in the dance, living, throbbing quality. The two arts are one, actually, Shiva Shakti only. There is no difference. But we have to deal with ours and you have to deal with yours. And we draw inspiration. And especially when the worldviews are common. Today, the contemporary dancer does not draw inspiration from sculpture because everybody's worldview is different. But there was a time in India when poetry, music, dance, painting, sculpture, all one worldview was expressed. So then they could draw from each other, there was synergy in the art form. Today that is lost because now we are, in a way, it's a liberal worldview, I feel what I feel and then I draw what I draw. And you like it, great. You don't like it, it's okay. You understand, great. You don't understand it. So this kind of fluidity, whereas transcendental says absolute. So the two kinds of arts are at loggerheads, because the basic foundation is different. And where do we meet? They also call it art. To be honest, the word art does not quite express classical Indian arts. It doesn't express. In so many ways, you try and bridge that gap. The word sadhana explains. that it's a pursuit of truth. That explains it more than art. Because art, then they say it comes from artifice. And, stylization is not artifice. It's truth it's another level, which is truth. Why do we change and stylize to reach the truth? So stylization is not exaggeration, it's not falsification, it's not over amplification. It is taking you to a stage of cognition from recognition, which is imitation is not there. When there is imitation, you recognize. But here there is no imitation. In fact, the aestheticians clearly say performing arts are not imitation. They are not like a magic show where you find out there is a trick. They are not like a mirage where if you go near, you feel there is no water. They are not just an inference that, what are they? Silence. They are not able to say. All they are saying is there should be alaukikatva. There should be rasatmaka. Bas. Alaukikatva means it has to be stylized, and these stylized movements come from a consciousness that has been able to loosen its connections to the mundane, not connections, but bondage. Then you can come up with stylized movements. It's only anybody who has learnt a performing art realizes how phenomenal is the work they have done and given us. And I'm each time amazed and in awe, and I have no complaints. I am surprised when classical musicians, dancers have complaints, because I feel this is coming from a higher level. To just reach that, to digest that, to assimilate that is so difficult. So there, definitely the word art is inadequate to, but now we are all in that category, art. Can't help it. I hope I somewhat answered.
Thank you again for this wonderful explanation, which becomes actually an experience when listening to you. When you were explaining about that the dance is something that happens and it's gone, it's over. Same thing also one experiences in music. The music
Performing
is
arts.
sung and it is
Yeah.
gone. That time the thought came to me, what is happening now in our society with all this recording, audio recording, video recording, which has kind of changed so much our relationship to a performance. And I'm also reflecting at that point of so many people now making selfies. So is it a Sakshi element which is now expressing in a different dimension that we want to Sakshi ourselves, so we are taking selfies?
That's not Sakshi.
And is the recording kind of a trying to be through some material forms to extend that experience? That was kind of an amusing thought that I had. I wanted to just
No,
ask.
no. That Sakshi is the self and nobody else. The Sakshi can only be the self. These are all records, you can say. Historical records of yourself or whoever else, And that's not the concept of. You can, as an allegory, say, but no, even then it doesn't fit. This is not. Sakshi is the self, and there can be no other Sakshi. The inner I that is awake when you are asleep, and even when you are dead, conscious of all that is happening, if you have reached that level. So that is Sakshi. It cannot be a person or a gadget or a formal thing. Then one can now, we have very clever minds and we stretch concepts and latch them onto things, but I don't see it that way. It could be wrong. Somebody might have another opinion.
Thank you very much, speechless. I don't know whether in this body I have the time to do your 100 years crash course, but maybe a smaller crash course. So yeah, deep gratitude. And as Yogini said, this is just maybe one of the hopefully several more of chances where we can come and learn from you. So thank you very much.
It's a vast topic, and every time I feel so many important points were not made, and they are not made. So please bear with me. I have to jump from topic to topic. And Aneri had a beautiful piece also, which I would have liked her to do, but time. Even she felt only 2 hours. So that's a classical art, you know. I curated the Kala Ghoda festival once, and we are supposed to mandatorily bring in contemporary artists. So I contacted this lady, and she said, yeah, I can do something for you. I said, how long is your piece? She said, 2 minutes. I said, we need at least 20 minutes. Oh my God, she said, we don't have so much. Now you tell a classical artist 20 minutes and they say, that's all. 1 hour, that's all. You know, it's so vast that we've come to accept that every generation more and more accepts that kind of time. There was a time Bala Saraswati did a Varnam for 1.5 hours, just one line. Then the Varnam became 1.5 hours. Then in my times, 45 minutes. Now it's 20, 30 minutes, and performances are getting shorter. Pieces are dropped. Nobody does a Jatiswaram. Nobody does a Shabdam because there is no time. Varnam is shortened. Tillana, my teacher would say, Hari, cut that part of the Tillana. And my Natuvana guru would say, hey, Tillana ek aurat hai, kaatne ka nahi hai aise. This sentiment. So things are changing like that, you know, and it's becoming, but thank you even for 2 days and 2 hours each.
I'd also like to very quickly thank the Auroville Festival team for welcoming Vidya Mandir and Arpana for these events. Thank you, Lakshay. Thank you, Priya. I'd like to thank the team at UP, Sergey for the tech here. Thank you so much. Anita, Isabella, Purnima. It's everyone who comes together. And of course, Deven and my colleague Megha to bringing this together. Mandakinidhi, maybe have you on stage just for 2 minutes. On behalf of the festival, we'd like to offer you a small token of our appreciation. Friends, I take that 2 minutes as she's untying her anklets. Arpana will be presenting a Kathak dance performance on Mahashivratri at this very venue, Nadan by Divya, on the 26th. So do come. Maybe have the young, lovely ladies to present. Aneri, maybe have you also on stage.
I'd also like to thank the technicians, Sergey. Yes, I did. You did that mention. And all these lovely students and other, I know what goes into the festival, cogs and nails and screws and bolts and, you know, down to, they're holding it all up. And so all those who are not noticed, thank you all.
Simran presenting to Mandakinidhi and Isha to Aneri. Thank you so much. Please put your hands together. This is truly something we're all going to cherish and mull and ponder over many, many, many days for it to really assimilate and come through us. Thank you so much once again. Namaskar.